Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I want to talk about 3-axis gimbals, specifically the FeiyuTech A2000. I've been making videos for over a year now, and although I've really enjoyed the process, it definitely was a learning experience. And one of the things that I learned was how using a 3-axis gimbal could really bring up the production quality of my videos. Up until recently, I was using a tripod for my videos, and although it's a pretty safe way to record, I just didn't get that dynamic or personal feeling that I wanted in my videos. And I want you guys to feel like you're right there beside me during my photo shoots. If you're interested in doing video work yourself, then I highly recommend that you get yourself a 3-axis gimbal as well. And the one that I'm going to be talking about in today's video, the FeiyuTech A2000, is one that I highly recommend for many reasons. But before I dive into those reasons, I wanted to show you guys exactly what comes with a FeiyuTech A2000 and how to set it up. So what I have here is the dual and a single handlebar option, which comes in this nice soft shelled case that has a red and black design just like the gimbal. And everything that you need for the gimbal is right here, all nice and organized inside the case. You have the dual handlebar, the single handlebar, 4 batteries with each pair lasting 12 hours, an included tripod which works really great with the single handlebar option, the gimbal arm and the motors, the quick release plate, charger and micro USB cable, and a little box full of several accessories like the lens mount, a cold shoe mount, shutter cable for Sony cameras, and an extra thumb screw. For this setup, you just need a camera and lens combo that weighs between 250 to 2,000 grams. That's actually why it's called the FeiyuTech A2000. A pair of the included batteries, the dual handlebars, a quick release plate and the thumb screw, and the gimbal arm and motors. All right, so the very first thing you're gonna do is put the batteries in, and on the dual setup, that's located on the left handle. So I already unscrewed it, now I just need to put the batteries in. So after you did that, you're gonna put the camera onto the quick release plate so that you can put it onto the gimbal itself. So I'm gonna put the gimbal to the side and show you guys how I'm gonna put the camera onto the quick release plate. All right, so the setup I'm gonna be using is the Sony A7RIII with the Sony A7RIII FE 1.8. And I have the lens mount on the quick release plate because I know it works with this lens. I'm not exactly sure how to tell if your lens should need this. Of course, if it's too small, then it won't need to be on. But if you do know, which lenses work with that, let me know in the comment section below. All right, so now that it's set up, and I do like that about the gimbal, you don't even need any like screwdrivers and stuff like that, because I've had to do that before in the past, and I'd rather not have any tools. I have my camera on the quick release plate. Now I just need to attach it to the gimbal to start calibrating. But I wanted to mention before you do any sort of calibrating, before you put it onto the quick release plate, is if you have a lens like the 16 to 50 or any other lens that when you turn it on the camera, it starts to shift and move differently. You want to turn on the camera and have it nice and set up like it is going to be when you're going to be recording, because if you don't, when you start to calibrate and you have everything perfectly calibrated, once you turn on that camera and everything starts to move around, then it might throw off the calibration. So definitely make sure the camera's on and you have any sort of attachments that you're going to attach to the camera on already before you start to put the camera onto the gimbal. Make sure as you're putting the camera onto the gimbal, you hold down onto this button right here. I think they call it the anti-column button, which kind of prevents it from falling off once you try to take it off. So make sure you have that button pushed while you're putting the camera on. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that I found that moving the camera as close as you can to this motor right here, it's going to be the best for stabilizing the camera. So get it as close as you can before you start to calibrate, but also keep in mind that you have it that close. So if you have a Sony camera like this one, they have these little metal things protruding on the sides that might kind of block you from putting the camera off the gimbal. This screw right here is going to be in charge of moving it left and right, and this one right here is going to be in charge of moving it front and back. The first thing that you're going to do to calibrate the gimbal is you're going to calibrate this motor right here, and the way you do that is move the camera facing down fully, and you want to get it to a spot where it's facing down and it's not moving back or front. Right now it's moving back, so I'm going to have to move this arm right here, and I'm going to just loosen this screw and go ahead and do that. And again, you're aiming for the camera and the lens to be facing fully straight down. All right, so ideally this is what you should see after this step. Now I'm going to move on to the next step. For this next step, you're going to aim for the camera to be like this, facing forward. Right now it's facing up, so I'm going to move the camera forward to kind of balance that out. All right, so my setup isn't perfectly calibrated. It's aiming a little up, but you know it's at a good calibration when you can move it into different positions and it'll stay, or at least move just a little bit in that spot. So I have it in a good spot where I can move it into different positions and it stays, or at least just moves a little. So now I'm gonna move on to adjusting, calibrating the roll axis. For this step, you're gonna be aiming for something like this. This is a good calibration when it's not tilting any, to the left or to the right. Right now it's tilting to the right, so I'm gonna balance that out by moving this arm to the left. But I wanna show you guys something that I had to learn on my own, and that's the arm is kind of really difficult to move it in this spot, but it's a lot easier to move it up and down when in this position. So if you guys have any difficulty moving it left and right, go ahead and just move the arm to the, this position, to a vertical position, and just move it up and down. All right, so I have the gimbal set up pretty good. Now all I have to do is turn on the gimbal, which you're gonna do by holding down the power button for about 2 seconds. And you know it's on when you hear that noise. The gimbal offers a few modes, with the first being pan mode, which is enabled by default and allows you to make nice smooth movements from left to right. You also have locked mode, which you enable by hitting the function button once, and once you enter this mode, you won't be able to move the camera anywhere other than where you had it when you enabled this mode. What I really liked about this gimbal is that you can turn it upside down to enter inverted mode, which is going to be perfect for capturing those great low creative angles. Like I mentioned before, you have locked mode, but that was a feature that was only recently introduced. Before that, you needed to hold the trigger button, and that made it a little difficult to hold when in inverted mode. You now have locked mode, so using the camera in locked mode when inverted is a lot easier now. I wanted to quickly show you guys how not to enter inverted mode because I made that mistake before. So I highly recommend you turn it to the left and not the right like I just did. The gimbal also offers pan and tilt mode, and that's going to allow you to do very nice smooth pan and tilting movements, which will allow you to do some really creative shots. The gimbal also has selfie mode, which you enable by hitting the function button 3 times, and this is going to be a perfect option for any vloggers out there. To exit selfie mode, you're going to want to hit the trigger on the back of the right handle 2 times. What's cool about the dual handle option is that you have these little red screws that you can loosen to go ahead and make this option a bit more compact. One quick thing that I forgot to mention about this option is that you have 9 1/4-inch screw ports to choose from to add accessories, which is 6 more than the single handlebar option. This gimbal offers no limit in the axis, which means that all axes can rotate 360 degrees, but what I find more appealing about this design is how much space you have between the camera and the arm underneath it, because you can position the camera as it is on screen a lot more safely than other gimbals that don't have as much space between the camera and the arm underneath. Like most gimbals out there, the A2000 offers an app that will allow you to control the gimbal from your phone and also make some adjustments to some of the features. Connecting the gimbal to the phone was as simple as turning on the gimbal, locating it on the app, and then connecting. And once you get connected, you automatically enter panning follow mode, but you also have the options of all follow and locking mode as well. In panning follow mode, moving the joystick to the left and to the right will pan the camera to the left and the right. In all follow mode, moving the joystick to the left will roll it to the left, and moving it to the right will roll it to the right, but moving it up and down won't do anything. Lastly, you have locking mode, and in locking mode you can move the joystick to the left and it will pan to the left, and moving it up and down will tilt it up and down. And clicking the reset button will bring the gimbal back to its default position. Another thing that you can do in the app is make some adjustments to the time-lapse mode, like adjusting the time that it takes to do any panning and tilting. Making the adjustment was as simple as tapping the current time, updating it, and then saving it. When doing a time-lapse, I found it really cool that the app would let you know how much remaining time you had until the time-lapse was finished. The time-lapse feature was easily my favorite thing about this gimbal. I could have done time-lapses before with other gimbals, but I didn't trust the base like I do with the A2000. Overall, I really do enjoy this gimbal, from the versatility of being able to use 1 or 2 handles, all the way down to even the color scheme. But if I'm being completely honest with you guys, there are a couple of things that I wish were different. One thing that I really couldn't shake off was the sawtooth design of the gimbal, because I found it to be a bit of a pro and a con, in the sense that It was helpful to have these little increments to choose from, but sometimes I found myself needing to be in between those increments, and when that happened, I had to settle for being slightly off. Another thing that I didn't like was the gimbal's roll arm, because it was pretty difficult to adjust it left and right horizontally, but it was a lot easier to adjust it up and down vertically. But that created a bit of an extra step because I'd have to adjust it vertically, then move it into the horizontal position again to check if it was calibrated. And if it wasn't, then I'd have to do that step all over again. This one's minor, but another thing that I wish was different was the position of the joystick on the dual handles, because I'm not sure if it was just me, but I felt like it would be a lot more comfortable if it was a little bit higher. But like I said, I honestly do enjoy this gimbal, and it offers so much for being less than $1,000. But enough of all the gear talk. I'm gonna be ending the video with some footage that I took the other day of my friend and model Suzette using the A2000. If this video helped in any way, smashing that like button wouldn't hurt, and neither would subscribing. Alright, take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one.